Hey y'all, Fat Man Outdoors. Today we're going to begin a process of doing a little bit of work to our P-07. We're going to improve the trigger on this pistol quite a bit. You can see it is unloaded and there isn't a clip in it. The trigger's not all that bad right now. The double action, I mean, it's a double action trigger. It's going to be what it is. They're all long and they're all pretty heavy, but the single action is not real bad. It's a little gritty. It's not real heavy. It's just a little gritty. Let me get my gauge here, and we'll pull on this thing and see just what it is right now before we do anything to it. We'll first try the single action. That's about 4.5 pounds. Let's try that again. That way we get 2 on it and we can confirm pretty close what it is. That one was a little over 5. So now let's try the double action. Now this scale only goes up to 8.5 pounds. I think it's going to max it out, I think. Yeah, it maxed it out. So I'm going to guess that the double action trigger pull on this pistol is probably going to be over 10 pounds. It's pretty heavy trigger on double action, but now most pistols that or double action, single action, that double action trigger pull, it's real long and it's heavy. But the weight of it I'm not really worried about. But what I would like to get is to get that grittiness and the stagey feel out of it. So what I've done is I've ordered some stuff from M-Carbo. This is a really good company to get stuff from, doing stuff like this when you're doing touch-up work on guns and you're doing internal work on guns. They sell a lot of good part kits for springs and polishing and stuff like that. So we're going to get into all of that over the course of a couple, maybe 3 videos, so they won't be too long. First, the thing we're going to do today is this spring kit. This spring kit is the CZ P-07 trigger spring kit from M-Carbo. It comes with the main spring, comes with the firing pin spring, the firing pin block retention spring, the sear spring, a roll pin, the trigger return spring, and a little small, about 1 inch square piece of 1000 grit sandpaper, so that you could use if you want to polish your firing pin retaining block, because that's kind of a part in there that rubs on another part. So if you get that slicked up good, it's going to take a lot of that grittiness feel. That's what we're going to do today in this video. We're going to put that in. But now when I ordered my stuff, I also ordered this M-Carbo gunsmith block. I like the way theirs is made. It's real light and it has a lot of different size holes in it and grooves. I really like the way this one looked, and it was dirt cheap. It's like $8. And by the way, this kit, this spring kit, I think was $21, I believe is what it was for everything. Good deal. I also purchased from them for $12 a polishing kit. Okay, and it comes with a big microfiber towel, comes with nitrile gloves, comes with 3 of these, and those are the little bullet polishers you can put in a Dremel. And we'll use those in the next video when we're polishing the hammer and the sear. But it also comes with some really good Fitz polishing cream, a little can of this. Now this little can that's in there, you see right there, will polish a lot. It'll do the work on a lot of guns. This stuff goes a long ways. But we're going to use all that in the next video, so we won't worry about that right now. So let me get the camera moved and we'll get started getting set up to change these springs in this pistol, and y'all can see how I do this. It's very easy. Shoo away, bug. crazy bugs. Alright, I'll set the camera up and we'll get started. Alright y'all, here we go. Tools we're going to need for this job, we're going to need 3 punches. We're going to need a 1/16 inch punch, a 3/32 inch punch, an 1/8 inch punch. These are roll pin punches, and I'll show you why that's important in a few minutes. You're going to need a block, a gunsmith block. You can make your own out of wood or buy ones like these that are made out of synthetic materials. They're pretty cheap, so you don't need to worry about that. You're going to need a hammer. Small hammer, doesn't need to be a great big hammer. This is a cool little hammer that I got in a toolkit that is got almost a full-size claw hammer head on it, but a little short handle, and when you're doing gunsmith work, it's pretty handy. Also going to need a little flat screwdriver, a little micro screwdriver. I'll show you what we'll use that for just in a minute. Going to need a pair of pliers or a pair of hemos, and you'll be using that when we put the trigger return spring in. You're going to need some kind of grease. It doesn't have to be anything specific. Synthetic grease is fine. You can use that and it'll work just fine, or you can use what I'm using, heavy duty axle grease. It's just something so that when you use that 1000 grit sandpaper, it's going to be wet sand that you want to do. You don't want to do a real aggressive sand. You just want to kind of polish the part that you're going to be working on. And that about does it for the tools that you're going to need for this job, guys. And it's pretty simple. We got our kit here that's got our springs in it. We already went through. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this firearm again. It's empty in the chamber, no mag in it, and the bolt face is empty. So now what we want to do is I'm going to drop the hammer on it. There's 2 little marks on this pistol. I don't know if you can see them. They're pretty small, that you got to line up. And once you line those up, just take your hand and pull it back. Then you take your little micro screwdriver here, get under it, just pop that right out. Then slide will just pull right off. We're going to lay the lower of the pistol to the side at the moment, and this is what we're going to work on. This is your slide and your barrel. So we're going to take out the barrel spring, take that out. We're going to take out the barrel because we don't need those right now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to replace the spring that runs the firing pin and also the spring that is on the firing tin retaining block. So we got to pull those out. So now we'll get started on that. Okay guys, now what I've done, I've got my slide for my pistol sitting on my gunsmith block. I'm going to take a 3/32 inch punch, set it right in here, and I'm going to tap the spring out. Okay, the pin rather, this pin's all the way out. This pin they put in them isn't too good from what everybody that I've talked to says that they wear, and eventually they'll break. You know, about 1,000 rounds they start getting quite a bit of wear on them. Mine's got some wear on it, and I've got about, I don't know, 250 rounds through it, something like that, 275. But we'll set that to the side. It's still usable if we had to. So now you got to be real careful. Hold your finger over the end of that firing pin before you pull your punch out, because it is spring loaded and it'll come flying out of there. So you want to take your pin out. There you go. Now we're not in danger of it coming out. It's still being captured by that firing pin block, but we're going to take that all the way out next. So then what you want to do is you want to push in on your firing pin, push down, and that'll let that firing pin come out. You just got to let it out slowly, because it will come flying out. Now it's going to catch in another spot as it slides out. So then you got to push that down again, and it's kind of hard to do that and not lay it on the table. So now there comes the firing pin. Now the firing pin's out. When you let up on that block, this is your firing pin right here. But when you let up on that block, make sure you let up easy, because it is under spring tension. It has a spring in it, and it will come flying out. As you can see, there's a spring in the end of that. So, and it'll come flying out of there, and these are parts you don't want to end up on the floor in your shop, because then you're going to have a dickens of a time locating them. Most of the time they just disappear. Now there is the firing pin spring. We're going to replace it, so I'm going to go ahead and lay it to the side. So now what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to open up the little kit that we got from Carbo. These guys really got some cool packaging. Everything you open with them has got some kind of cool thing on it. And I did get a sticker from them that I wanted to show you guys. Right here is a pretty cool little bling that was in my package. An Carbo sticker. That'll go on the sticker wall. Okay, we got our package here. These nitrile gloves help a lot. They come in the polishing pack when you're dealing with these springs because they're grippy, and it'll help you to grab a hold of the springs. Now I'm just going to put everything right down on the table here. Alright. And I'm going to replace the firing pin spring. You just slide it right over the end of the firing pin, and that's all you got to do to that. So now I'm going to set that to the side. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to polish the end of that firing pin retaining block. What I've done, that little piece of 1000 grit sandpaper that they give you in the kit, I'm going to hold it, and I'm just going to set the firing pin retaining block flat down on it, and just in a circular motion with that grease on the sandpaper. And you can do this. It's going to take some time. And all I want to do is just kind of polish this up, make it really smooth. You don't want to change the geometry of it. You don't want to sand on the sides any more than you have to. You may have to take a little bit of the sharp edge off if there's a sharp edge from manufacturing, because you got to remember, guys, these guys that build these pistols, they're doing this in a manufacturing setting and mass production, and they can't go real slow and make sure everything's just right and there's no sharp edges that here or there. They'll just look at places that might cause the customer to get cut if they're trying to use the handgun because of a sharp edge. They may take care of those, but internal sharp edges, they're not going to spend much time on them. Alright guys, I think that's just about got it. Let's clean it off here and take a look at it. Oh yeah, that smoothed it up a lot. I've seen some of these that had pretty big machine marks on them. Mine doesn't have many machine marks on the face of this little firing pin retaining block, but probably down the road I'll probably run into some that has got some issues. So now what we're going to do is we're going to replace that spring. I like to put just a little dab of grease on these springs. Lay that down so I don't end up dropping something. Just a little dab of grease on these springs. So when you put them in there, they it helps them to stay in the recess that they go in. And you don't have to worry about them falling off. It almost just kind of seals it in there, really. Alright, got that in there. Now we can set that to the side until we're ready for reassembly. Okay, now we're going to start reassembling our slide for the CZ P-07. We're going to take that firing pin block stop and the groove that the firing pin runs through. You can see that groove there, I hope. That goes toward the inside, so you want to get it oriented where it's pointing to the inside of the pistol, so it's not pointing to the outside. So you just slide that down in there, and then you're going to take your firing pin, and the firing pin has two little notches, okay, and they're going to face down or the top of your slide, okay. So you just push down on the firing pin block with the punch, and once you get it oriented correctly and lined up, it'll go right in. Make sure you got the notches that's on your firing pin pointed straight down or toward the top of the slide, because that's the way they orient, and it'll go in there, and once it gets in there it'll lock down. hold it in place. So what we got to do now is we got to put in the new roll pin. So we're going to probably going to do best if I do it this way, is lay it that way. You're not going to worry about doing anything with the firing pin at the moment, and you can put this pin in from either side. The holes are the same size, same side. You just need to make sure that the cut in your roll pin goes to the top of the receiver. So you just kind of want to line it up good and straight and get it started. Okay, now that we've got it good and started, we're going to put the firing pin all the way in. And you'll have to push that firing pin retaining block down a little bit in order for it to allow you to push that all the way in. Okay, well, now it's got your firing pin captured. Now I'm going to take my 3/32 punch, and this is where I was saying earlier, you got to make sure you got a roll punch. Roll punches line up straight because they have a divot in the end that sets in the punch. Alright, getting about even amount of space on both sides for the pin. Alright, we're good there. Firing pin is in, it is retained, and a firing pin block spring is in. That's the little part that we shined up with sandpaper. So now that's all we got to do to the slide. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this pin that holds the trigger spring and replace that trigger return spring. Alright, so next we're going to take our 3/32 punch and we're going to push out this trigger hinge pin. It should just slide right out. Alright, we'll let our punch follow right through it. And you can see that this little pin, it has a slot cut in it. It's not completely straight, and that's so that the spring and everything can locate in there and not move side to side, and that spring actually keeps the retaining pin on the hinge pin for the trigger from working its way out because of that little groove. The spring sets right in that groove. We'll lay that down right there, and I'm going to pull my pin out, my punch out, but you got to be careful because that spring will come out of there to meet you if you ain't careful. Now there's the old spring that we just took out. We're going to replace that with a new spring. But if you look right down in here, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but there's a hole right here that one end of the spring locates on. Then there's a groove right there that the other end of the spring rotates on, and it's kind of got a short leg and a long leg, and that long leg is going to set in the groove and the short leg is going to sit in that hole. So this is where the hemostats or needle nose pliers, whichever you choose to use, comes in handy, because that way you can grip the spring and put it down in there and hold on to it. Well, we're going to actually start our punch back through so that we've got that hole center located by pushing this pin through one of the two ears that's on it, and then I'm going to set the spring in there using my pliers or my hemostats, and then push the pin the rest of the way through. That's the plan anyway. Just push down on the trigger spring and hold a little pressure against the pin at the same time. Some of this stuff is tricky, guys. You gotta just kind of work with it till you get it. And now I've got my pin through the spring and through the whole pistol. You can see it coming out the other side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trigger pin and I'm going to push the punch back out. And again, you may have to finagle some stuff, but it'll go. You just have to work with it. Get it to go through. Once it pops in place with that spring, that's what's causing all that resistance. But we got that back through good. Those hemostats work wonderful for that. Now we see that our trigger is returning real good. Oh yeah, it feels real good. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to replace the mainspring in the handle of the pistol, or some people call it the hammer spring, the mainspring. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to set this down on the table and push down on it on our little hammer to take some pressure off of that pin. Now these can be a little tricky. You have to be careful with this thing, because now it does have quite a bit of spring pressure behind it. So now I've got my punch pushed all the way through, and that's the pin that came out. And again, it's another one of those that's got a groove cut in it. They engineered these pretty well to once everything gets together, it locks together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the gun down on the table. So I'm going to pull my pin out now and hold the lower on the table so that the spring don't get away from it. Alright, now I can lightly let the pressure off of it and take out our mainspring. And you can see the trigger arm in there. That's that piece right there. Use a punch, maybe show it to you right there. That little piece right there. That's what that trigger spring slides up over. So there's the old trigger spring. We just lay this over here in the old spring pile and put our new trigger spring right down in that little plastic boot that it's made into, and then we just slide the mainspring up over that hammer, the arm for that spring. Now you got to orientate the piece that goes over the end of that spring, or the spring plunger, some people call it, and so that the angle's right and the holes line up. And then you're going to press that down, and it's going to have a lot of spring force against it. You may want to get your smallest punch that you had out, that little 1/16 punch, and use it to start this with, just to get a pin through it and retain it, and then do the rest of your alignment from the other side. Kind of get your other one started from the other side. Okay, now I've got it retained with that little small punch. That should have it lined up pretty good, looks like. And then I'm just going to push this other pin out with the pin that's made. Okay, now I've pushed the pin all the way through. I'm going to look at it and see about if I need to drift it just a little bit one way or the other. And you can literally feel it fall down in the recess that pin has in the middle, so that it won't be allowed to walk out. So now we have changed our firing pin spring. We've changed our firing pin retaining block spring. We've polished our firing pin retaining block. We've replaced our mainspring, and we've replaced our trigger return spring. Okay, now let's put our barrel back in. Put our recoil spring back in. Make sure we get it lined up properly and compress it onto that lug. That's a bad thing about these nitrile gloves. They get grabbed by stuff. Okay, now we'll put the slide back on the lower, and again we'll pull these back, line those notches up, pop in our retaining lugs, Now, earlier, let's get our gauge here again. Earlier, we did the trigger pull on double action, and it was over 10 pounds. Let's see if it's that high again, because we're going to be doing some other stuff later, but I'm interested in that now. That one's just over 8 pounds that we've dropped that to, but it felt, yeah, it changed that by about 2 pounds. Okay, now let's try single action. See if what we did improved that. 4 pounds. Try it again. Three and a half pounds. Let's try it one more time. Three and a half pounds. So we lowered the trigger from 4.5 to 5 pounds down to 3.5 pounds on single action, and we dropped the double action. It's probably as good as any that I've ever felt, and we're going to even improve on that more in our next video when we take everything apart inside the gun in the receiver in the lower, and we're going to polish some stuff and do some other things inside of there to lighten it up. But oh man, that was a huge improvement on the single action. Wow, that's a huge improvement. I'm really shocked that was reading 3.5 pounds, because it sure don't feel like it. I'm going to check it again. Yep, right on, 3.5 pounds. Dead on, 3.5 pounds. That really shocks me that it's even that heavy, because it doesn't have that feel to it. It's really, really nice. Good, clean, crisp break. There's just a shade to take up, and you really, it's not draggy. And we basically haven't even begun. The only thing we did was put the spring kit in it. Once we get inside of there and we polish the sear, and we polish the hammer, and we polish the trigger slide bar, and a couple other things, this thing is going to be nice. And I'm shocked of the amount of difference that it made doing what we just did, and it wasn't hard to do. Well guys, I'll see you in the next video. Hey y'all, if you don't mind, click subscribe, and if you like the video, and click the like button, and we appreciate every one of y'all, and hope to see you in the next video. It's the Fat Man. I'm gone.